One thing to say, well, that company's failing, it's not holding its people. It's the entire industry that's failing to hold on to people.
This is the Construction Leading Edge podcast from ConstructionLeadingEdge.com and ConstructionBusinessAccelerator.com. My name is Todd DeWalt, and it's my job to help construction business owners maximize revenue and eliminate chaos. Got a great interview for you today with John Morris. He's a former construction business owner and current chapter president of the Ohio Valley Associated Builders and Contractors, the ABC. Great organization. I strongly encourage you to check it out. And in this interview, here's what you're going to learn about. Why John says that we as an industry have failed 70% of the people who have worked for our companies. You're going to hear about the disconnect between field labor leaders and management and how the system is basically designed to fail. You'll hear about the most common mistakes that you could be making when it comes to compensation, the difference between merit-based increases and social promotion, and we'll talk about why people are really leaving your company. Lots of good stuff here with John Morris. This is a great conversation. But before we get into that, I have a couple of resources that I want to make available to you and get into your hands. If you own or run a construction company, I want you to imagine this. What would it be like if you could schedule for revenue and you could drive your business instead of chasing it? What if you could design your operation so that you could stay out of cash flow crunch mode, you could make a healthy profit, pay yourself a healthy salary, and eliminate chaos in the process? What if you could have a steady source of leads so you could build the right kind of backlog without spending money on advertising? Well, I've got two programs I want to get in your hands for free. They're the Revenue Maximizer and the Contractor Sales Accelerator. They're worth about $4,000 combined, but right now you can get them both for free, plus a whole lot more when you claim your free 10-day trial of the Construction Business Accelerator program. You're going to get the Revenue Maximizer, the Contractor Sales Accelerator, plus a whole lot more. The Mindset Upgrade, the Leadership Masterclass, the Project Execution Formula, all of my best stuff. So if you like the podcast and you want to go to the next level and go deeper, get more practical, tactical, strategic stuff to put to work to help you eliminate chaos and maximize revenue, go get your 10-day free trial and get all of that stuff for free at ConstructionBusinessAccelerator.com. Again, ConstructionBusinessAccelerator.com. Grab your free 10-day trial of the Construction Business Accelerator. If you own a construction business and you want to increase revenue 25 to 50%, if you want to eradicate the chaos in your business and streamline it and turn it into a well-oiled, profitable machine, then this is for you. I want to invite you to take advantage of a special offer for a free business breakthrough coaching session where you and I are going to get on the phone and we'll work together to help you create a crystal clear vision for what ultimate success looks like for your business and the lifestyle that you'd like for your business to provide for you and your family. We're also going to uncover some of the hidden challenges that may be holding you back or even sabotaging the growth of your business, and as a result, keeping you working too many hours and not getting the results you want. And when we're done, you're going to walk away from this session renewed, re-energized, and focused, maybe even inspired to get after it and turn your business into a highly profitable, revenue-generating, well-oiled machine. So if you want to take advantage of this limited time offer for a totally free business breakthrough coaching session, then all you got to do is go to ConstructionLeadingEdge.com/call. That's ConstructionLeadingEdge.com/CALL. And one more thing for you, if you own a construction business or you're planning on starting a construction company in the near future, I've got a free video series I want to get in your hands. Have you ever wondered, how do the big successful contractors do it? How do they grow consistently? Why don't they have cash flow issues? What are they doing that you're not? Well, I've got a free video series called The Secret Strategies of Successful Contractors that I want to get in your hands. And here's what you're going to uncover in this free video series. One hidden cost that causes a lot of contractors to bleed cash and they don't even know it. There's this new way of thinking that will help you drive revenue, deliver projects on time, and ultimately grow your business and take it to the next level. You'll learn about some of the things that big contractors do to succeed that very few small to medium-sized businesses do. And lastly, you're going to learn why some of the biggest problems you're facing may not be problems at all. So if you want to get this free video series, all you have to do is go to constructionleadingedge.com/owner, OWNER. Click the big red button that says, yes, send me the information, and you will learn some of the secret strategies of successful contractors. Now, without further ado, let's get to the interview with Mr. John Morris. All right, John Morris, thanks so much for being on the podcast. How's it going this morning?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you, sir?
Good. So a good place to start would be, I heard you make a statement at an event recently, and I'd like you to expand on that. You said that our industry, the construction industry, has failed 70% of our people. Can you dig into that and explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, essentially, if you were to look back over the last 50 to 60 years, the construction industry has got a flat line with regards to productivity per person. And what that basically means is if you look at the manufacturing industry by contrast, you're going to see a significantly upward sloping graph. They're getting more out of every worker every year. Now, some people will say, well, that's simple because, manufacturing's got technology and they've invested in robotics, and, one person can run multiple CNC machines where you used to need 3 to 4 people. Well, all of that is true. We cannot defend the fact that for 50 to 60 years, we've had zero increases in productivity, and in fact, it's slightly downward sloping. And the reason for that, quite honestly, is because for those same 50 to 60 years, 60 to 70% of the people who enter the construction workforce, whether it be as apprentices or new employees, are no longer in our industry in the next 2 to 3 years after that. And so we simply keep recycling, bringing new people in. We're not changing our processes. We're not investing in training. We're not figuring out ways to keep people. So you hear about this multi-million number of workers short in our industry, and we forget that we've had 70 out of every 100 people we hire don't work for us and don't work in our industry, and that's where the real failing is. So it's one thing to say, well, that company's failing, it's not holding its people. It's the entire industry that's failing to hold on to people.
So let's dig into that. I'm a big root cause analysis guy, and one of the things I want to talk about is, do we really have a skilled workforce deficit? But what's at the root cause of this? The fact that so many construction companies are revolving doors. Is it one thing? Is it a bunch of different things? And if so, what do you think are the contributing factors that are leading to this 70% failure rate?
Well, it's a number of factors, and of course this doesn't apply to every single company, but you have to take every micro company and add it up and create a macro problem. And so there's a significant number of companies that simply have not taken the time, and we all also as an industry lament our industry image problem. People just don't understand the construction industry. They don't recognize what a great career path that the construction career is. They have misconceptions about the hazards associated with our industry. Well, we can only look to ourselves to blame for that. If we're not out there, and I would look, and one of the core problems that I think I would point to as a key initial source of this is 30 to 40 years ago, we sent our sons and daughters off to college, which was not a bad thing at that time. But we basically broke the pipeline of generational talent that we always counted on. So grandfathers were plumbers, and their sons were plumbers, and their grandsons were plumbers. And we had that generational. We had rural communities where we would consistently draw out of the agricultural community. We failed to address and look at the demographic changes in our nation and see that the rural communities were shrinking, the urban areas were growing. We didn't shift our focus on recruiting to those urban areas nearly quickly enough. We still haven't had a focus in doing that. And we failed to address that generational breakage, and we romanticize rather than fix what the industry needs to do. So we think about, I remember when I used to just have to open the door and I'd have 10 people apply. I remember when I would just ask my one employee, hey, who do you know? And he knew 3 or 4 people that we can hire. Now we look around and we find ourselves with the average carpenter being 56 years old. Who does he know? He knows other 56-year-old people. That's not a way to rebuild our industry and to quote solve our labor problem. We have a labor challenge, but the issue is not a shortage of people. The issue is image, recruiting, where to look, and how to find them.
Yeah, let's dig into this, because one of the messages I'm trying to get out there right now about the perceived, well, I call it the skilled labor delusion, because I think people are deluded thinking that all we need to do is hire more people. And what I tell people is, if you're an organization of, say, 50 employees and you think you need 10 employees, well, if I would suggest that if you were to hire all 10 of those people next week, number one, it would not solve your labor problems, and two, it could put you out of business for a variety of reasons. And so I think people have this delusion that there's a silver bullet to all of their problems, and that silver bullet is hire more people. And the numbers don't lie. I found a statistic from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that we have a 61% turnover rate in construction. So that means 6 out of every 10 people either get fired, laid off, or quit voluntarily every year. And that's no way to to grow a business. That tells me that if we just throw more people into that meat grinder, we're just going to disillusion more people. We'll lose them. And I heard somebody say this recently: if Mike Rowe and all of the trade organizations and everybody does their job, and we get this massive influx of young people who come into the trades and they get excited and they jump into the construction industry, what's going to happen when they show up to these job sites and company cultures that aren't ready, and the infrastructure is not there, and there's chaos, and the people work there for a few months and they say, this sucks, I don't want to do this. We're going to lose all these people, and that's not Mike Rowe's fault. That's not the trade organization's fault. That's on the people running the companies. What should companies? What are a couple of things that companies can be doing right now that maybe they're not thinking of that will help them solve their perceived labor challenge?
Well, the first thing that the listeners to this podcast, whoever's out there listening, hopefully you are listening, is to recognize exactly what you just pointed out. The Associated Builders and Contractors has invested a tremendous amount of resources into outreach, finding new candidates to be hired by our member companies. We are a workforce development organization now more than ever. So whatever you may or may not think about the Associated Builders and Contractors, we are not what we were 50 years ago, because at our core we work for our members. Well, about 5 to 8 years ago, our members came to us and they said, hey, we really need to make sure our training programs are state-of-the-art, top-notch, world-class. We made all of those investments. We now have, some of the best, if not the best, training facilities for all of the trades that there are. We have world-class safety programs to make sure that we keep our people safe, and the health and safety and wellness of employees is always going to be number one. So now that we're safe and now that we're well trained, we turned back to those members and said, all right, we've got the programming, where are the people? And their answer was, we can't find people. All right. So we, as an association, worked to solve our members' challenges. We got into the outreach business. We connected to vocational education and the career tech schools. We partnered with social service organizations and unemployment offices. And lo and behold, we found people willing, ready, and wanting to work and grow into a career, to become a tradesman, to become a plumber, to become a carpenter. So what we have found over the last few years is most of those companies that love this statement, I hear it all the time, oh, I'd hire 20 guys tomorrow. Well, no, you wouldn't. And if you did, just like you just pointed out, it would probably be a mistake. You would probably fail them, and it could break your company. Because what is missing is if you're going to hire someone, you have to think long term. Just dropping a laborer into a job site is like it could be a bomb. You don't have the infrastructure set up to accept that resource, inject it into these crews, and make it a productive resource. What we have seen is there are superintendents, and there are site supervisors, and there are job foremen who have been trained to believe and who on a daily basis want to run that new hire off that job site as fast as they can, because we have this huge disconnect between management wanting to grow the organization, the estimators and the business development people wanting to bid more work to grow the company, and a field labor force that's held to a standard of productivity that cannot be held with a new, less skilled worker added to the mix. Because when I come in as a apprentice one plumber, guess what? The journeyman plumber is going to have to slow down to properly show me how to do the job. And if he does that, then the productivity per worker on the site will take a short-term hit. That short-term hit is immediately recognized on the profit and loss statement. It's immediately recognized on the rate of return on job productivity and progress. And that's when a different part of management, the folks in the operations wing, come down hard on the superintendent and foreman and said, we're off schedule, guys. We need to do this. We need to do this. And that's when the foreman comes back and says, well, those new guys you sent me aren't any good, so let's get rid of them. And so they fire them, because it's a lot easier for me as a superintendent to blame lack of workers than it is to say I'm not a very good trainer and I don't know how to adapt to this new help.
Yeah, and one of the ways I can see that happening, that's a really good point. I've never really thought about that, John, but one of the ways I could see this happening is if project managers and office management are looking at labor hours, if they're looking at the labor budget on a project, well, the productivity for a new hire is zero initially, and maybe the productivity for a seasoned professional, a journeyman, could be like 60-70%, which is probably about as good as it's going to get. And you are putting inexperienced, unproductive people in there. They're gobbling up your labor budget, and then management is coming down on the superintendent saying, hey, you're not meeting your numbers. You're trending toward being over your labor budget, and it's not their fault. It's not the superintendent's fault. That's an interesting catch-22. So it's almost like the system is set up to fail, right?
It is, and we're trying to work with companies to look at this challenge completely differently. When you have that new hire who is a less than productive resource, think about it when you and this is an analogy I always like to give. You think about when a company is going to go out and spec a new piece of equipment, or let's just be simple, they're going to order a new truck. You can get 5 to 10 people in the room, and they will all talk for hours on end about the different skills or the different extras that they want to order on that truck. Oh, well, we need a lift gate. We need a job box. We need a wrench. We need whatever it is. They will sit there and they'll spec out that truck, and then they'll order that truck in, and then they'll break it in, and they'll incorporate it into the operations. They won't just immediately drop that brand new piece of equipment on their least skilled worker. No, we're going to take this new truck and we're going to assign it to this particular person. So think about what they're doing. They're laying out an exact strategic, tactical implementation plan on how to get the most efficient piece of equipment and to put it in a position that it's going to offer the greatest rate of return, because they know they're making a significant investment. Yet we go out and we recruit a human, a person with a massive greater ability to impact the bottom line, and we just throw them out in the field. And we don't think about who we're assigning them to, or introducing them to the pathway, or investing in some initial training to make sure that they're properly fitted and skilled and have the equipment they need. We just have this great dream that they're going to show up I mean, think of, and we all know of how many times somebody has shown up without the proper equipment, and they give an apprentice, well, here's a list of all the tools we expect you to have on the job site, as if this young new hire who's never worked in our industry has even if they had the financial wherewithal to invest in, a few $100s worth of equipment. We don't ask that in any other part of our business. Yet with people, we just, again, romanticize about this person who's going to show up with all these skills and all these tools and drop them in and be immediately productive. We don't even do that with trucks. So why are we doing it with people?
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I think a good way to think about it would be hiring someone is probably not much different. We should use the same level of due diligence when hiring someone as we would when buying a $50,000 piece of equipment, because the average cost of an employee is about $50,000. That's average by the time you factor everything in, and you're going to keep them around about a year. So you wouldn't. I mean, I've seen people scrutinize $200 invoices much more than they scrutinize hiring someone. It's like they do the mirror tests during an interview. They hold a mirror in front of their mouth and see if it fogs up the mirror. Okay, you got a pulse? Yes, we'll take you. Get out there. Why aren't you productive? And it's
the truck analogy, think about it just from an accounting and finance standpoint. It's a capital investment that we expect to get a rate of return over a period of years. And once that thing is fully capitalized, then it's just straight to the bottom line productivity. And yet we take a person and we throw them immediately to the P&L and expect to get a full rate of return on them from day one. And if we don't get that rate of return in 12 months, we throw it away. Mm-hmm. So think about a truck. We buy a truck. We think that everybody on the crew immediately is going to know how to use that thing. It's a site level or a laser, whatever that new piece of productivity is, some new tool set. We don't train any of the people on it. We just go and buy this $50,000 tool and we say, guys, go use this. Well, half the crew never picks it up because they don't know what it is. Those that try it stumble through it, and then, okay, well, it didn't work. Well, let's just throw it away and buy some new $50,000 piece of equipment. That's what this industry is doing with people. That's what it's doing with labor. We would never do it with capital. As you said, we'll scrutinize an invoice over a $200 variance on the cost of wire nuts, but we don't think about making those same long-term investments in people.
Yeah, and that's I think that's in a blind spot for most people because of this mindset we have about people, like labor. For example, I've heard this, one of the first jobs I was on back in 1995, I heard a superintendent say, you get paid for what you've got from your shoulders down. I get paid for what I've got from my shoulders up. And if we look at people like some sort of asset that are interchangeable and just replaceable, and maybe this goes back to 40, 50 years ago, the old mindset that I worked with an old superintendent once that bragged about the fact that he fired every carpenter out of the union hall, and he just churned through all of those people thinking that they were the problem, never looking in the mirror thinking, I wonder if maybe I'm the reason that 25 carpenters didn't work out on my job site. So what are some of the mindset issues or the perceptions that really need to be changed about labor that are at the root of some of these problems?
That the first thing is that we as companies have got to recognize is you can't treat every employee the way you were treated. I was hazed and yelled at and treated abusively. Okay, well, that's fine. That was your decision, and you had a reason why you wanted to be there, and you stuck it out. The fact that other people opt out of that scenario is not a them problem. Not everybody wants to sign up for that, and it's not as if, a lot of folks came through harder times. We are working in an environment where we have national unemployment of less than 4%, and we have some states that have unemployment of less than 2%. And that accounts for all the structural unemployment when a business shuts down and somebody's just transitioning into a new position. Most economists will tell you anything under 5% is full employment, just because the structural nature of the way the economy works. So it's not as if all these folks don't have choices. So that's the first thing. The second is, quite honestly, whether the listener is a union contractor or a merit shop, 86% of the industry and 86% of the workers choose not to participate and be part of organized labor. So the vast majority of listeners to this podcast are going to be merit shop companies, non-union firms. Almost every one of them, if not every one of them, treats their employees from a compensation standpoint the way a union does. Social promotion, and you give them increases based on time. So, okay, we hired Todd, and Todd's been here a few weeks, and he's showing up on time, so let's give him some more money. And Todd's been here 6 months. Let's give him some more money. And Todd's been here a year. Oh, time to give everybody some more money. And we give everybody the same bumps. Oh, it's been a year. Better give everybody 50 cents. The idea of social promotions and social increases, time-based, not merit-based, because we call ourselves a merit shop, where we should be rewarding people based on the productivity that they bring to the job site. In fact, in most companies are simply just giving these annual increases flat across the board, socialist or social promotion, so everybody gets $1. And then what happens? 12 months, 24 months into it, that superintendent gets called to the carpet to say, why are we losing money on this job? Well, you remember Todd over there? He's no better than the first day we hired him, and we're paying him, $18 an hour when we started him at $14. He's not worth $12. So what do? You fire Todd, and you start the cycle all over with a new Todd. When in fact, what you should be doing, and every organization should be doing, is creating merit-based increases that are objectively told to the Todd when he starts. Todd, welcome. We're glad you're here. We're starting you at $12 an hour. We're not going to have high expectations for you, but hopefully within the first few months after some training, you'll be able to hang 2 sheets of drywall an hour. And Todd, when you can get to 3 sheets an hour, we're going to give you another $1 an hour. And when you can get to 4 sheets an hour, and when you can get to 8 sheets an hour, then you're going to be a journeyman and you're going to be making $35 an hour. But Todd, if you don't increase your productivity over time, then we're not going to be in a position to pay you any more money. That's where we're at. We keep socially promoting and throwing money at individuals in hopes of keeping them rather than holding them accountable to productivity increases. That's why that graph I talked about at the very start of the podcast is flat and downward sloping. We're not increasing productivity per worker.
Man, that is such a good point. Social or socialist promotion. Yeah. And another thing that I would add on to that is I've been in organizations where the only way to get a pay raise is to threaten to leave. So that creates a culture of terrorists almost, where they go solicit some offer from another company, take it to the boss, and say, John, I'd like to stay, but I've got this offer. These guys are going to pay me another $1 an hour. Can you match it? And then you, as you said, you give a raise to prevent people from leaving, and then that person wins, and then what happens, right? Everybody else finds out, oh, I haven't gotten a raise in 3 years. It's because I'm not being a terrorist. So you create this culture where the organization is rewarding people to keep them from leaving as opposed to being productive. Yeah, that is such a good point. So that old mindset of going back to, it's just about tenure, where people get raises, they get paid based on the number of years, not based on productivity. And that's really where, in my opinion, if you want to incentivize somebody, then you have to align their incentives with the goals of the company. So base it on productivity, on profitability, customer satisfaction, things like that. Yeah, that's such a great point. Let's pause here for a second. Go ahead.
Well, and I just want to thing real quickly. And companies can't wait until the annual bonus to be the only time they recognize these things. We live in an instant gratification economy. We live in an instant gratification society now. We can't just say, "Oh, wait till the Christmas party to recognize those star performers and pass out dollars at then." It needs to happen much more frequently. We need to be telling our good people how good they are a lot more often than we do.
Yeah, that's a great point. Tell me what you think about this idea. I recently read a strategy from a CEO who said that to avoid this terrorist culture, to have annual compensation adjustments so that all the adjustments are made based on company performance and made in the context of everyone else, but then to have discretionary bonuses or discretionary rewards to reward the kind of behavior that you're looking for. So one of the things I did several years ago was the behavior I wanted to encourage in this company I was running was I wanted guys and gals to go the extra mile. I wanted them to do what was expected, but then to go a little bit further. So I put together a little incentive program called the Extra Mile Club. And supervisors could nominate one of the people on their crew for the Extra Mile Club. They would just send it a message, "Hey, Jose did this, went out of his way, maybe caught a problem before it happened," whatever it was, went the extra mile. And then Jose got a T-shirt and a gift card, and maybe they got some recognition. So tell me what you think about that idea of having regular compensation adjustments based on performance, but then having discretionary rewards and incentives to reward that behavior. What do you think about that idea?
Well, I think incentives are one of the biggest and most misunderstood concepts in running a business. The first largest mistake most every employer makes is believing that money is a motivator. People do not work for money. People do not leave your company generally just for money. Once you get past a certain point in your life where, if I'm, in poverty and I'm scraping by every single day, then yes, I'm gonna take a 50-cent increase because that could make the difference in 3 meals a day or 2 meals a day. But once somebody is in a position of sustainability in life, they're not moving. You don't lose managers and middle managers and supervisors and superintendents and executives most often for pay. They're going to leave for opportunity or recognition or the chance to grow or the chance to be part of something that excites them. The salary is, especially with new people and millennials, is almost meaningless. I mean, we walk in and give presentations to groups of people, and you can earn a lot of money in this industry. I had a very good local guy group that does business development, and they say, when you go in and promote your company, how many of you are saying, we've got the capability to do this work? Well, guess what? No one says they don't. So you're not really differentiating yourself. So money is not a motivator. Any type of incentive package can matter, but I think what you just talked about is great because in addition to having monetary opportunities for advances, you had a recognition program. And first, how many construction companies, Todd, have you ever run into that have an Employee of the Month Club program? I have yet to see any. We have a program at ABC where we recognize the craft professional of the year. And this is a nomination process where a company submits to us one name, somebody in their company that they feel is a rock star. They deserve to be the Craft Professional of the Year nominee from their company. My chapter of Associated Builders and Contractors, again, there's 70 across the nation, and each one has one of these challenges, this competition, Craft Professional of the Year, and the winners go on to be potentially National Craft Professional of the Year. And at the national level, they get a check and they get a brand new truck sponsored by tradesmen. You're going to get a $50,000 prize because your company said you're a rock star. You would think that I would get hundreds, if not thousands of nominations, because in my little chapter of ABC, we represent about 30,000 employees. Todd, on a given basis, year to year, I get maybe 24 nominations. And frequently, they're going to come from 5 or 6 companies. So if a company won't even take the time to acknowledge its rock star by just nominating them for an award, which takes all of 15 minutes to fill out a piece of paper, name, rank, serial number, why this person is special to you, they're completely missing a fabulous opportunity to show the field personnel that they recognize their best worker. How do they do that? Well, they've got their covered, Todd. They just give them that bonus check at the Christmas party. I'm sorry, but that's completely different. You have to have that morale building, because if I'm that new young apprentice and the company has recognized that my superintendent is a rock star, well, then I'm going to look to aspire to be that guy, because he got invited to the celebration and he got to wear the special pin and he got the Employee of the Month club badge or the special parking lot, or remember that fancy truck we talked about earlier? Maybe the Employee of the Month gets use of that truck. Those are the kind of things that when you hear and read about, the employers that everybody wants to work for, best places to work is, in every business periodical in every city in America. Those are the kind of things you read about in best places to work. You never read those employee comments that say, oh, they give everybody a Christmas bonus. Oh, they give everybody 50 cents an hour when they've been here for 6 months. Those things just don't work.
Yeah, that is such a good point. That made me think back to organizations that I've been inside, and the ones that motivated me the most and the ones that really demotivated me. I can remember having a conversation with an executive at my annual review, and this was a fairly large company, and it came out that my bonus and my salary for the next year was basically determined by the pool of people I was in. It was a socialist approach, and I got promoted as with a pool of other people, and basically, and beyond that, I found out that my salary was factored back to the salary of new hire employees that were hired, who were hired in 5 years after I was. That was basically the calculation. So essentially I said, so Dan, you're telling me that my performance has nothing to do with my compensation? And he said yes. And I could not believe it. That is incredibly demotivating. So I think a lot of owners, maybe it's a cop-out. It's easy just to say, well, you know what, we're just going to give everybody an across-the-board Christmas bonus. We're going to give everybody a raise, cost of living. That's easy. But because having some sort of a performance review program and going through that mental exercise to do that, that's hard. But you're right. The companies that are consistently recognized as the greatest places to work, and probably the most successful companies, are the ones that are doing the hard stuff with their people, and they're not just taking the easy way out. Yeah, such a great point.
Yeah, creating objective pathways is not easy, but once they are in place, you're going to get so many long-term benefits. Again, people, when I want to map my mode of transportation, or I'm trying to get from here to St. Louis, I'm going to get a map. I'm going to go on Google. I'm going to figure out the best pathway to get there, and I know how to get there, and I know what's going to be there when I get there. I don't want to just go out and randomly, pick roads, purely, or just have somebody call me and say, "Oh, well, now turn left or now turn right," because it seems subjective, and no matter these annual bonuses that are just kind of randomly passed out, people invariably think, oh, well, so-and-so must have got a better check than me because the boss likes them more. Everybody needs to objectively know what they're getting. And the biggest mistake, and what you just said reminded me of a time when I worked for an organization that in my dealings with my employees, and I've owned a number of different companies, I never at any point in time combine a performance review with a compensation discussion. When I sit down and we're going to talk employee performance, we're going to talk about how good you are or how you might need to improve. But at the end of that discussion, we're not going to talk about money. Because I worked for an organization where on an annual basis, we got no reviews during the year, but we got an idea that, like you said, well, we're going to earn a bonus based on the performance of the company and the performance of our division. And so if over the course of the year you thought the division was doing quite well and the company was doing well, and you sat down and you got a great performance review, Todd, you're doing great, you're really working hard, and we're going to give you 2%. Now all of a sudden you have just, you went in expecting 8% or 6%. So everything that was said to you about how great an employee you were and how valuable you were just got thrown in the garbage because you didn't get the number you expected to get. Or the exact inverse. You sit down and somebody tells you, hey, you really need to pick up your performance. These other folks are performing better than you. The department isn't doing what we thought. We're giving you 4%. Well, you walk away and none of that feedback on improving mattered because you got a bigger bonus than you ever expected. Compensation and performance discussions should never intermingle.
That probably catches a lot of people off guard, but it makes perfect sense. Let's shift gears and talk about your organization. You're the president of the Ohio Valley Associated Builders and Contractors. What exactly does your organization do?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for the opportunity to talk about ABC. The Associated Builders and Contractors exist to help contractors who want more. If you're a contracting organization that has all your bases covered, you're good with training, you're good with safety, you're good with business development, and you have everything you need and everything's going great, then wonderful. ABC you don't need to be part of ABC. If, like many contractors, and most of our contractors have been members for 30, 40, going on 50 years, they find continuous value in being part of an association. And what we say at Ohio Valley ABC is we're there to help you with more. And what is more? More is more connections, more resources, and that's going to lead to more opportunities. But at the core, we say we work for our members, and we truly do. So I mentioned earlier that our members want us to help them find people. So we've developed pipelines of talent and workforce. So anytime a member calls and says, I need someone, well, we're going to have somebody available for them. If they say, I'm struggling with this regulatory issue in this small community, they've got these permitting rules or regulations that just make it onerous to do business there, then we'll use our political resources and our advocacy to knock on their door. And it's the power of the association knocking on that community to say, there's 350 plus contractors that think this rule doesn't make much sense. Can we talk to you about it? That has more leverage and power than a single contractor knocking on that door. We're just there to react. So years ago, in my particular part of the state of Ohio, contractors were saying, hey, health insurance is out of control. We went out, researched the rules and regulations, and created a group health insurance product that now 60+% of the people who come into and get a quote from our product are going to save a considerable amount of money on a product that they thought they had no control over, because we found a mechanism to represent 300 employers negotiating for health insurance rather than one. So it's really the power of a group, but our core is we work for you. So when a contractor comes in and says to me, hey, I want to grow my business, I'm going to respond to say, all right, tell me a little more. How do you want to grow your business? Do you want to grow your business by working with new contractors, or do you want to grow into a completely different marketplace? You've been traditionally in the residential sector, you want to grow to commercial industrial, or you've traditionally been in retail and hospitals and you want to grow into industrial. We have the resources and the connections to make those things happen, and little things that come from provide huge value. So we provide 2 free legal seminars every year as an example, and you're going to sit down with a panel of attorneys who for 4 hours are going to explain everything that a contractor like you did wrong last year that you don't want to do this year, contract language you want to avoid, how to put language into your contract. So we've been talking extensively about workforce here. One of the things we hear from our contractors is, well, I can't go work for that guy anymore because I did a project for him and he stole 3 of my employees when the project was done. We show a contractor how to put contract language so their own customers can't steal their employees. So, we're losing not only to other contractors, we're losing to manufacturing and to aerospace and to other industries. So keeping people within our industry is critical as well.
What are some of the, maybe what is one unexpected benefit of being part of an organization like ABC? Maybe it's something that's not so apparent, it doesn't even show up on the website, but your members are saying, this is one of the best things about being in the organization.
Well, I think it's kind of mistaking ABC as an association that's like a chamber of commerce. Oh yeah, I know all about them. They do that. They have that blanket of services that's kind of generic and kind of doesn't apply. What are they going to do directly for me? That's not how ABC works. When you have a chamber of commerce, and again, I hope everybody joins their local chamber of commerce. They provide great services and they're out there for the business community, but they're going to service a lot of different industries. And so when you go to a chamber event, it's going to present leadership in a very generic across the spectrum because they have to represent their membership and they represent a lot of different industries. At ABC, everything is customized and tailored specifically to the contracting industry. And unlike a lot of other organizations and associations, in ABC, typically 75 to 80% of our members are contractors. So we're not catering to people who want to sell product to our members. We're not beholden to suppliers and associates. So when you come to an ABC event, you're going to be intermingling and working with other contractors who you want to learn from, work with. And so we really have these established peer groups. So when we have a safety peer group meeting, we don't call it a committee because we're not asking the members to do anything. We're asking them to talk with each other and learn from each other so that best practices can then be shared. And so where do you go and learn best practices? You come to an ABC event, you participate in an ABC peer group. But the other thing is that we look at, okay, ABC is not an inexpensive trade association. We don't pretend to be and we don't want to be the cheap guy on the block because we work for our members. But typically the cost of belonging to an ABC is less than the cost of having a temporary worker for a couple of weeks. Whereas if you join ABC, you're going to get, usually a typical ABC chapter has 8 to 10 full-time employees working all year long. So I always say, where can you find 10 people to work for you full-time for the price of a two-week temp worker? That's what ABC does for contractors.
Yeah, great explanation. As president of the organization, you get the opportunity to interact with and talk with and maybe even counsel a lot of construction business owners. I'm curious, what are some of the most common mistakes that you're seeing contractors make right now?
Well, we talked a little bit about this earlier. Thinking that people are leaving your company for 50 cents an hour, that's just not happening. They're leaving for other reasons. Companies that are investing more into recruiting without subsequently addressing their own company culture issues, these are the most important things because at the core, every construction company can do estimating. Every construction company can bid a project. Most established companies can get bonding and insurance. So companies that don't focus on their point of differentiation and are not investing the time to implement tactical organizational change to reflect what they state in their strategic plan. So anybody can sit down for whatever period of time, whether it be an hour, a day, or 3-day, 5-day corporate retreat. They can create the greatest strategic plan that's going to set the vision for the company for the next 5 years, 10 years, 50 years. If they don't come back and make those tactical implementation changes, then the strategy will never work. So I was fortunate enough to have a very successful electrical contracting firm. I sold my company in 2000 and got into education. And I was an economics professor at the University of Cincinnati. I taught strategic planning. And it was a simple statistic to share. 90% of strategic plans fail because 95% of them are never implemented. You create a plan, you come up with a vision, and then you just go back to the same way of doing business. So, addressing a company culture is critical because, I know of one particular company that went out and said, we're gonna go out and we're gonna dominate the marketplace in recruiting and finding people. They invested in 3 full-time recruiters. They hit every job fair that there was out there. Then they said, well, we want to make sure, because you also hear, Todd, people say, well, if I only had somebody who could show up on time and pass a drug test, then the world would be my oyster. The reality is that's not hard. You can find people to do that. So this one particular company had these 3 full-time recruiters. They said, we want to make sure before we put them into the field, these companies, these employees that we hire, prove to us that they'll show up on time, that they'll be drug-free, they'll be safe, and they'll be trained. So after hiring the 3 full-time recruiters, they invested in a training facility where they put everyone through a boot camp type experience. So all of these new hires, before they ever saw the field, would spend 40 to 120 hours at some times, so 2 to 3 weeks full-time, showing up every single day on time with all of their safety gear, getting all their OSHA certificates, being trained in company processes, being given and outfitted with all the tools they needed to succeed. And so over the course of about 18 months, they brought in 100 people. They graduated 100 people out of that program. And 2 years later, out of those 100 people that started for this company, Todd, how many do you think still work for that company?
I would guess maybe 15 or 20.
I won't put you on the spot. Yeah, 15 or 20, you're being generous. 3.
Oh, my gosh.
97% failure rate because of the disconnect between a strategic plan put forward by management for hiring and training and finding new workers based on what they heard from the field. The field said, man, if I only had somebody who could show up on time and knew what they were doing. Well, they solved that problem, but that wasn't the core problem. The core problem was the field really didn't want them. And we went back to what we talked about earlier, and that they were assigning the cost of those individuals to the job site rather than to a training program. Those superintendents were being held accountable for productivity issues, and so the easier thing was just to run them off than to actually adapt and get them incorporated into the field. So companies need to address their culture. They need to start treating their Merit Shop employees like Merit Shop employees, and understand, we're not losing this fight for labor over dollars per hour. We're losing it because we're not selling a grand vision for life in our industry and how good it is. I know you've seen these surveys they do of workers in all industries, and they survey all the workers in construction, and they survey workers that are teachers, and in healthcare, and in restaurants, and in retail. Almost every year for the past 10 years, I think it's like 7 out of 10, construction workers are deemed the happiest workers. Every single day, we get to look at what we did and say, I did that. And for our lifetime, we can drive around our communities and say, I built that, I built that, I built that. The satisfaction that comes from working with your hands, getting things done, and being a productive member of society. I mean, you think about the burnout in accountants and lawyers and doctors, and in healthcare. We've just got such a great story to tell, yet we lament that our industry has this image problem. We've got to do something about it.
Yeah, one of the things that really stands out to me is that a big part of the hiring and a key to successful integration is not just the new hire, but it's everybody else around them. It's the existing employees, it's the foreman, the superintendent, the project manager. It's really everybody's job to integrate this new person. But so often we look at the new hire and say, they're fill in the blank. They're a millennial. They're too young. They're too old. They came from outside the industry. They don't understand. They don't get it. They don't want to work, etc. I've heard people say that we don't have a skills gap. We have a will gap, where people don't have the will or the desire to work. And I think it's a cop-out. I really do. I think I have a suspicion. Actually, it's more than a suspicion. I know that there are companies out there who are doing these things right. I don't know what percentage they are, if they're a minority or a majority, but there are companies out there who have a good culture, and they're integrating people, and they're keeping their people. They're not a revolving door. And they're just quietly beating the pants off everybody who's complaining, looking out and saying, well, the problem's out there, and it's somebody else's job to solve my problems. The companies who are winning right now, they're not out on LinkedIn, and they're not complaining. They're not talking to recruiters and writers about how bad things are, because their culture is a competitive advantage. And they are beating the pants off the people who are complaining about how bad it is. So, yeah. Great stuff. One last question before I give people the information on how to connect with you and where they should go if they want to learn more. I always like to ask, do you have any recommendations on either business or leadership resources that have been helpful to you? Maybe it's a book or a particular author, podcast, anything like that you would recommend, or that has been specifically or particularly helpful to you?
Well, I'm an avid reader, but my reading is different than some in that I don't tend to jump into the long reads and the extensive novels and books. And I just try to be very well read. So I read 3 to 4, believe it or not, newspapers a day. So I will pick up the Wall Street Journal, the USA Today, and my local newspapers because I live in between two major metro markets. I read the Dayton and the Cincinnati newspapers because I want to find, because a lot of local trends are highlighted there. A lot of national trends come out in the national magazines. I try to stay on top of and read, great. There's great summarizers in the construction industry specific markets. So the materials that you're putting out, I follow. Other newsletters that I get out from other associations that, stuff that shows up in my inbox, I look at it, I scan it, I read it. Staying on top of the industry because we're a fast-paced industry. Construction Executive is a magazine promoted and published by the Associated Builders and Contractors. Always great content on a monthly basis is kind of my thing. But here recently, I've gone back to the Franklin Covey people. Franklin Covey is still kind of known as, they're the planner people. Why would I need to work with Franklin Covey? Because, I don't use my planner anymore. I've got everything in my smartphone. Franklin Covey has always been about productivity and maximizing the efficiency and getting more out of people, but they're also strategic. So, the planner was your implementation to make you a more organized individual. Covey was always really about effective habits of leadership. And so the Covey folks can provide some really neat resources, quick hits, a lot of podcasts and reviews, and they've all got a regional network of providers of services that can come out and talk to an organization about, looking at things a little differently. And the construction industry, like a lot of industries, we think, what do you know about my industry? You're not in construction. Well, you look at the greatest corporations in the world, and not everybody who sits on their board of directors is in their industry. In fact, most people aren't, because you need that external lens to ask the dumb question. Why do you do it that way? We got to get off our high horse in construction and think that we couldn't learn something from somebody maybe in manufacturing or a consultant who doesn't know anything about construction, but they know a lot about organizational productivity, and they know a lot about employees and incentives and compensation programs that matter. We tend to focus too much on, and it's just the nature of who we are. I mean, I'm an electrician by trade, so I want to spend more time looking at the field than I do looking inside the office. But the office frequently again, has those retreats where they come up with these grand ideas and then they just throw a lot of money at a problem and they don't really address the core cultural issues. So there's a lot of different things out there. I just encourage people to always be well-read and to take the time, to be as much.
Good advice. If people want to find out more about the ABC or want to connect with you, where should they go? Whether it's a website, social media, email address, phone number, what's the best place for them to go next, John?
So, depending on where you are in the nation, there's an ABC close to you. You can go to abc.org, which is the National Association and the National Associated Builders and Contractors website. At abc.org, you can search for a chapter near you. And I would just knock on their door, call the chapter president, and see what services they may have to offer in your local area. If you want to contact me about anything that was discussed here or any of the resources, and I'm happy to help introduce you to any of those resources as well. I'm the Ohio Valley chapter of ABC, so instead of abc.org, you just put an O and a V in front of it. It's OVABC, and my email is very simple. It's John, John, @ovabc.org. I'm happy to talk to anybody in the construction industry because I'm here for our industry and I'm here for contractors, and anything I can do to help grow our industry, whether it be from workers to training to resources, I'm happy to be a resource to folks.
Great stuff. I appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast and sharing and for offering to make those introductions. This has been extremely helpful, so I really appreciate it, John. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. Have a great, wonderful day.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that interview. Be sure to check out your local chapter of the ABC. Reach out to John. If you want the links and notes from this call, you can go to constructionleadingedge.com/095 for episode 95. Also, if you're listening to this on a mobile device, chances are the podcast player that you're using has the details. There's a details section or something like that where you'll be able to see the show notes, and the links will be right in there. So make sure, don't forget about those resources that I made available to you if you want to get your hands on a free test drive of the Construction Business Accelerator and get the Revenue Maximizer, the Contractor Sales Accelerator, and about $9,000 worth of stuff in total, and get it for free for 10 days. Go to constructionbusinessaccelerator.com. Go schedule that free call with me. If you want to talk about a specific roadblock or talk about strategizing for your business, you can go to constructionleadingedge.com/call to do that. And go get yourself your copy of the Secrets of Successful Contractors over at constructionleadingedge.com/owner. And as always, I appreciate the ratings and reviews. If you could go to the ratings or the review section of the podcast player of your choice, leave a rating or review. That would be tremendous. If you're on iTunes and you're not sure how to do it, I put some instructions together for you at constructionleadingedge.com/iTunes review. And you know what? If you just want to call me or send me a text because you can't remember any of this stuff, maybe you're driving, one number you can remember, 859-667-2015. That's 859-667-2015. You can send me a text, call me, and I'll get back to you and tell you what you need. All right, that wraps this one up. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you next time.